say are very similar to the customs of Yom
They were in the bar mitzvah, you mentioned.
Austin, in Texas. That was actually the first time.
Was closed in 1997.
I think that we're in a time of great opportunity and great danger. The opportunity comes from the fact that the global economy is changing very rapidly. Globalization is for Israel manna from heaven. It's a godsend because it means that we can compete in vast markets, carve our niches, and not be dependent on bureaucracies and on impediments. To give you an example, just imagine that we had to sell our products to every one of the 50 states of the United States, and each one was a separate government, separate customs union, separate bureaucracy, separate taxes, and so on. It would have been impossible for Israeli companies to do so. But when an Israeli company sells to the United States, it's one market. This is what is now happening in the world with globalization. So for all countries, but especially small countries, this is a very, very great blessing. To adapt to these markets, to exploit it, we have to have made changes here, which were very difficult, but they are now bearing fruit, and the Israeli economy is growing very rapidly. Essentially, it's transforming the Israeli economy, which was built on socialist lines, along free market lines. Now, I've said this because it's important to understand that without an economic base, we cannot do anything. It's not only that imen kemach en Torah. It's that imen kemach en agana. Without a strong economy, we cannot defend ourselves against the great challenges that await us in the future. We will have to spend in the 21st century billions and billions of dollars to protect ourselves with means on land, on air, and in the sea. And this is very expensive indeed. Nobody's going to give us the money, but we can easily get the money by having a robust and growing economy. A robust and growing economy is what can absorb new immigrants and additional immigrants. It is what can give us the ability to handle the real welfare cases that we need to tend to. That is to help the truly weak, or the handicapped, or the old, or to help education, or health. All these things can be done only with a very, very strong economy. So I'm committed to continue where we began, and I deliberately begin this because questions have been raised by the Haredi community about the economic program that I've had. They say it's unjust. What is just? What is social justice? Good. Well, we don't have to look to other peoples to get the answer. We know that our prophets, Amos, Ishayahu, Yirmiyahu, they were very clear about it. They said the social justice is to help the orphan, to help the widow, to help the lame, the sick, and so on. And then 2,000 years later, a great sage, one of the great Jewish sages of all times, Maimonides, said that social justice, he said, is a ladder. It's a ladder of good virtues. And the lowest level of a ladder, he said, you give a handout to somebody. You give him a nedava. He put that at the lowest level. It includes, it's a social virtue, but a low one. And at the highest level of the ladder, he said, help this person get a job so he can support himself and his family. And the question is, who is right then? The ancient prophets or Maimonides? And the answer, like in all cases where you have rabbinical disputes, they're both right. How can they both be right? It is that we must separate our population into those who can work and those who cannot work. Those who can work should be allowed to go to work, should be encouraged to go to work. And those who cannot work would therefore be supported by the revenues, by the taxes that we take from those who are in the job market. This is essential. If we don't do this, we were at the point of collapse. I must tell you that I know that this has been a very, very difficult transition for the Haredi community. I'm deliberately speaking about it because I know that this is a matter of considerable controversy and so on. I think this has saved the country. It has brought our economy up. It has filled the coffers of the state. It enables us now to give medicine to poor people that we didn't have before. It enables us to give 150,000 warm meals to children in development towns and all sorts of impoverished neighborhoods. It allows us to give old age pensions. It is still difficult, I know, for the Haredi community and for others, but it is the right direction, I'm sure. Now, if we want to help large families, we will have to find a way to do so without undertaking problems that endanger the future of our state. I want to tell you that the consequence of the changes that we have made is that for the first time in many, many decades, the Jewish birth rate and the non-Jewish birth rate in Israel are approaching equality. And you understand that for there to be a state of Israel, a Jewish state, it has to have a strong Jewish majority. Before the reforms that we made, there was a real danger that we would slowly but surely stop being a majority here. Now, with the tremendous decline in the Arab birth rate inside Israel, and no decline in the Jewish birth rate inside Israel, in fact, that danger is receding. And this is something that we have to consider. In other words, we should continue with the economic policies, find ways to help the weak, because we have full coffers, we have a lot of money that this economy is generating, but continue to encourage those who can work to go to work so that we can help those who are weak or poor or sick or orphaned to adjust to a life. Those who can work should work so those who cannot work can be helped. This is social justice, I think. Now, I said that we have defense means and defense needs. I must tell you that we cannot minimize the dangers that we face. And the danger can be put in two words: militant Islam. Militant Islam is a force that challenges modernity. It's a force that challenges our very existence. It doesn't want to merely wipe Israel off the map. It wants to resurrect an old conception of an Islamic empire and to obliterate anything that stands in its way. It wants to reverse the course of history and the rise of the West. And it wants to do so not through fair competition in the economic field, but it wants to do so by blood, by violence, by terror, and by nuclear terror. The most dangerous development is the acquisition of nuclear weapons by Iran, and this is something we must prevent. I'm coming from the United States. Before that, I was in the British Parliament and the French Parliament, and I found that leaders of both parties in the United States understand that Iran having nuclear weapons is unacceptable. Now, there are three things we could do. We can do nothing, in which case in 3 or 4 years, they'll have nuclear weapons within that time. That's not a lot of time. That's 1,000 days. And a day has just gone by. We can consider the military option. That should never be left off the table, but it's always an option of last resort. And I was glad to hear one leading American senator, who's actually a presidential candidate, say the only thing worse than a nuclear action on Iran is a nuclear-armed Iran, rather a military action on Iran is a nuclear-armed Iran. So it's an option that should be left on the table in case the third option does not succeed, or in order to make that third option succeed. Specifically, I'm talking about the use of economic sanctions against Iran. No, I'm not waiting for the United Nations Security Council. I understand that this is a weak and ineffective pressure. But it is possible to interdict banking activities in Iran. This is what the U.S. Treasury is doing. And it is possible to persuade American pension funds not to invest in Iran. This is an effort that I'm personally involved in. Not to invest in European companies that invest in Iran. And we should tell all people who consider helping those companies that they are in fact helping Iran build suborbital space vehicles, which they launched 2 weeks ago, which are a precursor to ICBMs. What do they need ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, for? Not for Israel. They can already reach us with the missiles they have. It's for Europe. It's for every capital that you are coming from, for every country in which you are now residing. And it's for the United States, for the eastern seaboard of the United States. So Iran can be stopped, I believe, because its economy is very vulnerable, very, very vulnerable. Ahmadinejad just lost elections, local elections, interim elections, because of the weakness of the Iranian economy. And it is possible, I believe, either to stop the nuclear program or begin to topple this regime or this leadership. And that, of course, is something that is not merely important for Israel and the Jewish people, it's important for everyone. I believe that this is the most important task facing us. I cannot say that there is something greater. I said recently that it's 1938, Iran is Germany, and it's racing to arm itself with nuclear weapons. What should be our response? Well, a few months ago I read an interview in one of the European journals, an interview with a Holocaust survivor. And the interviewer asked the survivor, what is your main lesson from the Holocaust? And he said, my main lesson from the Holocaust is that if somebody tells you that he's going to exterminate you, believe him. Well, I believe that the intentions voiced by Ahmadinejad, the leader of Iran, I believe that he means it. And I believe that if he gets a nuclear weapon, he could be tempted to use it. And I believe that such a regime is fanatical enough, crazy enough, perhaps to be the first nuclear power that does not consider deterrence, that will not be deterred by other considerations. And therefore, the most important thing that we can do is prevent it from arming itself. If we act in time, we can do it. These are, I think, the two most important things that we can do. Continue to develop our economy so that we can impart social justice. These are not contradictory ideas, a free economy and social justice. Social justice depends on a free economy to create the money to help the weak and the poor. And secondly, and the jobs, of course. We created almost 300,000 jobs to liberate people from being totally dependent on welfare. And secondly, the most important thing we can do externally and internally is to develop the means and methods to prevent the arming of Iran with nuclear weapons. If we achieve both goals, then I think, God willing, we will have a great future before us. The Jewish people have come back to this land, built up our country, secured our ancient capital, Jerusalem. We've seized the high ground and we shall keep it. But we have to work at it. And I think the most important third element is the one that you obviously understand, because this is why you're doing this important effort with Ronnie Bruckner's inspiration and with all of your contributions. I think the most important thing is to impart Jewish values. It's important to understand what connects us to each other as a people and what connects us to this land. And this is something that every person should have, whether he's a Chabadnik, and sometimes you can be an honorary Chabadnik like me, because I had the great privilege of meeting the Rebbe and to be inspired by him, by his vision, by the depth of his passion and belief. But it's something that I want to see every girl and boy in Israel have, because it's not just a question of accidentally being here. We're here for a purpose. We're here by choice. And ultimately, all the things that I described, the opportunities that we have to exploit, and the struggles that we must wage, derive from the fact that we are waging it here, in this country, in our land, the land of the Jewish people, for securing the Jewish future. And this is, I think, perhaps the most important foundation for the house that we want to build. Strong commitment, dedication, and education of Jewish values. So I applaud what you're doing. Do a lot more. And I'll be happy to be part of it. Thank you very much.